I want to go to John Brennan. Okay, so it's like super duper deep state. John Brennan, who's on set at MSNBC saying, well, they can't go after me for anything. And just think about what he's saying here, because remember, John Brennan was one of those that signed on to the 51X spooks. They all knew that the Hunter Biden laptop was being investigated by the FBI, but they just sat there and flat out lied to you over and over again. This guy went on television. He was an MSNBC contributor and just lied to you over and over and over again. I mean, that's pretty gross. Watch.
I don't see any case against me. I have looked back on all of my actions and decisions, and with John Durham, the special counsel, and others that have looked at what we did, it was certainly consistent with our legal authorities and with the law. So I don't know what they're referring to there. Individuals who used to work in the government, even if their security clearances were revoked, they could be subpoenaed. They could be, called to provide testimony in support of whatever allegations they have. I don't see a case there.
Trump has announced.
Really, I'm kind of seeing a case, John Brennan. I think there might be one. And I think you're going to be in a lot of trouble, and I think they're going to find a lot of things. Again, let's talk about the difference between how this corruption is sort of approached, right? Obama was doing all kinds of things. Don't forget, Tulsi has uncovered that meeting he held in December, right before the transition, where they made a deliberate effort to make sure that they would come up with this Russiagate, even though they had intelligence that said the Russians had nothing to do with the election. No, they decided to assemble everybody and put together a narrative and work on that narrative. And what happened? Oh, that narrative echoed. It ricocheted from one network to another, from one newspaper to another. And they just kept going with it and going with it and going with it, to the point where, James Comey is out there saying, well, I'm going to have to tell Donald Trump about this one dossier that we found, even though they knew it was fake, right? Because they want to be able to leak that to the media too. And then they went out and they indicted 19 people. So before anybody says, the Biden administration, they were so squeaky clean, they didn't do anything wrong. This is a total I can't even say it. We'll go with authoritarian nut job. The reality is, you guys did it, and you did it in spades, and you did, and you know that it's coming back to bite you in fannies.
Donald Trump and the administration continues to weaponize the Department of Justice. What James Comey did 11 days before the election in 2016 had something to do with the fact that Donald Trump got elected the first time around. This is how Donald Trump repays James Comey? With this malicious prosecution? It's all crazy to me. It's crazy to me. These charges are going to be dismissed. James Comey will win in court.
I'm not so sure about that. I think Brennan is pretty nervous. I agree with our commentator who just weighed in on this. Look, you had 19 people indicted. It was a miserable time, we all lived through it together. And now, maybe it's payback. I don't know. Let me be completely honest with you guys, okay? I don't like the idea of retribution. But I also don't like the idea that one side can do it. And let's be really clear who started this. Really clear, because I've told you before, the president told me himself that he wasn't going after Hillary Clinton because he didn't think it was appropriate, because she was the former, or I guess then current wife, if we can call her that, of one Bill Clinton, a former president. He also said she was my competitor. I don't want to do that, because then we're just going to turn into a banana republic. And so he really felt very strongly about not going after her for those emails and the servers. And he went in there just to do a good job, just to try and get the economy in a better spot, which he did, right? We saw middle-class wages grow for the first time, the most they'd ever grown since all the way back to, you got to go back to JFK to see wage growth like that, median wage growth. So the economy was humming along. Everything was great up until March 2020, when we got a virus courtesy of a lab in China, right? And then Fauci lied about that one too. And this is all coming out too. These are big things. You cannot lie to the people like this. And for whatever reason, they thought they had it all rigged. And now he came back and he won. And so this is sort of the wrinkle in the plot, if you would. Don't forget what happened back in November of 22. A reporter asked in an international press conference, hey, Joe Biden, President Biden, can you reassure foreign leaders that there's no way Donald Trump is ever going to return to power? And what did Biden say? And I quote, well, we just have to demonstrate that he will not take power by if he does run. I'm making sure he, under legitimate efforts of our Constitution, does not become the next president again. Oh, play it again, Sam, okay? He does not become the next president again. What do you know? I think the more you guys said that, the more the American people were determined to elect him. And so this is how it went with people like Hillary Clinton saying in a 2019 podcast, I've been interviewed, he knows he's an illegitimate president. And because of that, he's obsessed with the fact that he won the Electoral College. He lost the popular vote by 3 million plus votes. Hey, Hillary, guess what? I guess you got that going for you because Kamala doesn't. He won the popular and the Electoral College with Kamala. And then you get this one, Maxine Waters repeatedly calling Donald Trump an illegitimate president. You had Bernie Sanders saying Trump's victory was not legitimate given Russian interference. You had media voices all over. This is what I said, ricocheting, right, off of the networks from NBC to CNN, MSNBC to outlets in the New York Times and the Washington Post and all these liberal rags like Daily Beast, etc. I mean, this is what they were pushing nonstop. And they would regularly use this term, the columnists would, calling him illegitimate. Like, who has ever done that before? I don't think we've ever seen that before. Jerry Nadler, John Lewis. On the day of the inauguration, Nadler said he's not legitimate as president. He was tainted by the Russian interference. John Lewis, congressman, 2017, said, I don't see this president-elect as a legitimate president. I just figured I'd save you from having to play all of those clips. But you could watch like 20 minutes of those clips. They just kept saying it and saying it and saying it again. And then they got, ladies and gentlemen, a former president of the United States who basically had one step sadly in the grave at the time. And I'm talking about Jimmy Carter. That Michelle Obama didn't even have the decency to go to his funeral after he went out and said this for her and her husband and the entire party. I mean, to think that a sitting president would call another president illegitimate based off false information that Comey and everybody else knew was false. That is unthinkable. It is so wrong. And so when you sit there and you tell me, he shouldn't be doing this, I'm like, what do you think? Who do you think started this? For goodness sakes, Jimmy Carter. I realize you're not with us anymore, but you were wrong. Watch.
There's no doubt that the Russians did interfere in the election. And I think the interference, although not yet quantified, if fully investigated, would show that Trump didn't actually win the election in 2016. He lost the election, and he was put into office because the Russians interfered on his behalf.
So do you believe President Trump is an illegitimate president?
Based on what I just said, which I can't retract.
They're like, woohoo! We got a sitting president to say this because this has never happened before. Okay? Never, ever happened before. Let's go back into, I'm a history buff. I was a U.S. history major at Columbia, back when Columbia was a real school. Okay? Disputed elections and legitimacy talk. Let's talk about 1824. You had John Quincy Adams versus Andrew Jackson. Jackson won the popular vote, but Adams is the one who became president after what they called a corrupt bargain in the House. Jackson supporters loudly claimed Adams was illegitimate. But you never had a former president joining in the chorus. No, there was no Jimmy Carter out there in 1824 to do that because, people had some dignity, shall we say, back then. Dignity, it matters, believe me. And 1876, we had another situation with Rutherford B. Hayes and Samuel Tilden. This is the closest historical parallel, really, to what we saw now. You had Hayes losing the popular vote in a backroom deal, the compromise, right, of 1877, which handed him the presidency. And many Democrats called him his fraudulency. Kind of like illegitimate president, not my president. The Russians handed it to him. But again, no ex-president actually came out and said he was illegitimate. You had no sitting president who used to formerly be president of the United States come out saying anything like that. I mean, that's just unheard of, right? Because you're then undermining the entire trust in the system altogether. Well, let's move on to even 2000, right? We remember that one well, hanging chads and all that bit. George W. Bush versus Al Gore. After Bush v. Gore, many Democrats argued Bush was, quote, selected, not elected. And so Representative John Lewis, him again, and others refused to attend Bush's inauguration. But Gore himself did concede. Bill Clinton never called Bush illegitimate. And the party leadership accepted the Supreme Court's ruling. So what's going on now? Why would we have a Jimmy Carter do that? They put him up to it? Wow. And how do you explain all this TDS on steroids that just won't seem to go away? I mean, I would say that the way Obama approached this, he had the media in his back pocket. Biden had the media in his back pocket. I mean, they were just doing nice little cute stories about how cute he was when he licked ice cream cones, right? And they refused to acknowledge any reality, including the disastrous health decline that was obvious to anybody who could see it. And if I reported on it here, I had to be very, very careful, right? I had to say, well, I'm not a doctor, but I've seen this before. They were going crazy. You weren't allowed to talk about these things. It was awful, guys. It was awful. Okay, so don't tell me that they didn't do it, because they did it in spades. Here's Rosie O'Donnell freaking out so badly. She said, she keeps telling her therapist, like, I don't understand why other people don't see this. Her therapist thinks she's nuts. And, I'm inclined to side with the therapist on that one. But, I could have told you that, and I wouldn't have charged you, Rosie.
When people say, I changed my mind, we have to say, welcome back to reality. Let's all be Americans together, right? Because what's happening is not only happening to Democrats, it's happening to everyone. And when the Medicaid cuts go in, old people are going to start to die. What he's done yet hasn't even hit us yet. Right. And if he's not stopped now, we have lost our country. And I don't know, Nicole, how it is that some people cannot see it. My therapist said, why are you so upset? And I said to her, why are you not?
Yeah. Yeah, I have that conversation too, because the gaslighting that I think you're alluding to, if you're a thoughtful, informed person, you do stop and say, well, maybe it is me.
Ooh, yeah, maybe it is you, whatever your name is that hosts the show over on MSNBC and some kind of podcast, which I actually haven't seen up until today. So there you go. New time for everything. Anyway, Rosie is very active on the liberal podcast circuit because she's got to get all these frustrations out. It's like another form of therapy for her, I guess. Maybe the therapist isn't listening enough, so the MSNBC anchor may listen a little bit better to the TDS that is just crippling her. Because you know what's amazing? Check out these poll numbers. Democrats' poll numbers, Dems' poll numbers are just in the, I'll say it. Because, I didn't get to talk the bad language earlier. So they're in the toilet, okay? The Democrats' poll numbers are a disaster. And I'm going to show you what this is right now. I mean, I don't think we've ever seen anything so bad as these numbers. Even a few weeks ago, they were bad, but they've just gotten worse. So there's a brand new poll that came out, and I can't wait to show it to you guys because it's like they just can't figure it out. And I think it's because they're trying to overthink sort of how we are, right, as human beings. And I think that they think that they know better, and they don't. So here we go. This is the opinion of the Democrat Party right now. Graphic courtesy of Fox. Thank you for that. Let's take a look. Okay, so we've got favorable versus unfavorable. And the unfavorable is more than half the country. Only 30% of Americans view Democrats favorably. So now what do you do? if you're the Democrat Party right about now. Like, I think you kind of have to start saying to yourself, this is not working. This whole, like, you know, let's hate on ICE, let's hate on Trump, let's be all for men playing women's sports. Like, I just don't think that's working for you. And if I were you, I'm going to give you some unsolicited advice here. I'd actually go back to your roots. And by your roots, I mean, think about what was said in the 1995 State of the Union, okay, by Bill Clinton. Because if this was said today, he would be called a fascist by the modern Democrat Party. This is 1995, the State of the Union, and this is where the Democrat Party used to be. And if they can't get back there, those poll numbers are going to keep getting worse.
All Americans, not only in the states most heavily affected, but in every place in this country, are rightly disturbed by the large numbers of illegal aliens entering our country. The jobs they hold might otherwise be held by citizens or legal immigrants. The public service they use impose burdens on our taxpayers. That's why our administration has moved aggressively to secure our borders more, by hiring a record number of new border guards, by deporting twice as many criminal aliens as ever before, by cracking down on illegal hiring, by barring welfare benefits to illegal aliens. In the budget I will present to you, we will try to do more to speed the deportation of illegal aliens who are arrested for crimes, to better identify illegal aliens in the workplace, as recommended by the commission headed by former Congresswoman Barbara Jordan. We are a nation of immigrants, but we are also a nation of laws. It is wrong and ultimately self-defeating for a nation of immigrants to permit the kind of abuse of our immigration laws we have seen in recent years, and we must do more to stop it.
Reasonable speech. The problem is Donald Trump gives that speech and they all go wild. You get TDS on steroids with Rosie crying her eyes out every time she gets onto a podcast. And The View doing the same exact thing. And this artist that's going to be playing at the Super Bowl calling Donald Trump bad names in Spanish. It's like a Puerto Rican slur that's even like worse than what you would. I mean, it's a bad word. I'm not going to repeat it, okay? I learned a new word today. Anyway, the truth is that you've got a party that just wants to take him down, period. And they weaponized what they did. Now they're angry because he's turned around and said, well, I can do that too, to play that game. And he's not like holding back. Like they actually tried to like dot their I's and cross their T's. He's like, woohoo, you and you and you and you. And so, I'm going to play you some sound from somebody who I don't really like. And I suspect has some rather unscrupulous morals himself, one Michael Cohen. But Michael Cohen's the former attorney. Remember, he went to jail, for Donald Trump. He was the attorney for, I should say, Donald Trump. And that was that whole Stormy Daniels thing. He got on MSNBC and he pointed this out. It's like nobody wants to hear it, but don't act like this just started yesterday, okay? Because there was weaponization that went on, severe weaponization that went on during the Obama years and during the Biden years. And even, by the way, when Donald Trump was president, because he didn't see it coming. Watch.
You're saying right now is that the Department of Justice under Donald Trump has been weaponized or has not been weaponized?
I think it's been weaponized under more than just Donald Trump. I think it's been weaponized by government for, I don't know, as long as it's been around.
Well, because I think your argument is it was weaponized then by Comey against Donald Trump. That's what you're arguing right now. And so you think that there will be evidence that will show that in court and so thus validate Donald Trump's vendetta against James Comey.
At least I couldn't have said it better.
So there you go. Look, it was a bad time. it was a bad time, and now, it turns around, it's going to be a bad time for them. And what goes around comes around. Again, I want to reiterate that I'm not saying that this is in any way right, but I am saying that you got to fix this situation. You got to fix this situation, because otherwise you're just going to have this repeating itself over and over and over and over again. And that is not where we want to be, right? That is not a good place for anyone to be.